Pastor Rick, once again, thank you for taking the time to sit down, answer
Yes.
some questions. So the other day I heard this verse in a podcast,
Was it a British
not
one?
our podcast, not our podcast.
Okay.
But it struck home for me. So it's Proverbs 27, verse 21. The crucible is for silver, and the furnace is for gold, and a man is tested by his praise. The idea being that maybe one of the biggest challenges for a person is how they respond to praise, right? Will they become puffed up with pride, or will they be able to remain humble?
Yep.
The fact that it struck me so poignantly probably speaks to my struggle.
It's because all the praise you're getting.
Yeah.
I mean, is that a covert way to say you really are
No,
getting a lot
it was more of a
affirmation?
just like, what? I don't understand this concept at all. What's? Am I missing something? Where's
What is praise?
what is this?
Yeah.
What is this thing you speak of? But it makes me think. This is a common for anybody that's in any sort of public, station where they're in front of people, right? You as a pastor are the recipient of both criticism and praise at different times.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, everybody receives those things at times, right? Stay-at-home moms may receive veiled forms of criticism from other people who think the way they're doing things as a mother is wrong, right?
Right.
We all receive criticism and
Sure,
praise in different venues.
Yep.
So my question for you is, what should we do with that? Do we close the hatch and pretend like it's not happening?
No.
Do we believe all of it?
You disbelieve the praise and you believe the critique.
See, I've been doing it backwards this whole time. You can speak a little bit from a personal perspective
Sure.
too. Like, what do you do with that? Because you probably get more of that than most because you're in front of people a lot.
I get my share. I get my share.
A reasonable amount.
Yeah.
But help people how should they respond when someone critiques them? And likewise, how should they respond when someone praises them? What do they do with all that?
Yeah, a couple general things first. Yeah. I think that for us to be shocked or upset by criticism speaks to a delusional mindset where you think you're doing everything right. I mean, I think we have to assume that we're walking through life the best way we can, but we have to expect that we're going to falter in places and not do what is right or what is best every time. So I'm not shocked if I get criticized. I don't look at that like, I can't believe that I'm being criticized. Well, no, I believe I'm being criticized. In fact, it's really the opposite. If I'm not criticized, I'm going, what's the matter?
Start to get nervous.
Starting to get nervous. Yeah, exactly. And I think, another general principle is we don't do what we do to please men. So we can't rely on men's praise, nor can we be devastated by men's criticism at the same time.
Yeah.
If you're going to buy into and be gullible enough to believe all of the praise, that means you have to accept all the criticism as equally valid. So when I receive praise, which I can't say that I'm grossly accustomed to praise, but when I do receive it, I appreciate the heart of the person that believes that God used me. But when I receive criticism, I receive the heart of the person, imputing to that person their love for me in that they want me to be everything I ought to be, or they wouldn't care. They wouldn't share it with me. So it's the heart of the person in a praise or in a criticism that I value both of those hearts.
And it sounds like you choose to believe the best.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Right.
Why would I do anything?
Rather than perceive it as negative in some way.
My dad used to tell me, Rick, I'd rather be stabbed in the back 100 times than to walk around a cynic. So I've adopted that same mindset. I don't want to be a cynic. I'd rather believe the best about people and have somebody pull a knife out of my back. The Lord's going to heal up that wound just fine. So I don't worry about it. I think that the first thing that I would say more specifically is whenever a criticism comes to you, you need to seek to refine it to its nugget. Or, sort through all the chaff to get to the kernel, of what's being said. There may be a lot of things, and you would be foolish to concentrate on chaff that's in there and thereby dismiss it as an irrelevancy to you and miss the kernel. Or you may see all this dross being siphoned off and not see the nugget. So I think we need to sort through all that, not in a dismissive manner that'll self-vindicates, but in a manner that says, okay, what is the kernel that is here? What is the nugget that God has for me in this criticism that I should pay attention to? Read Proverbs 15, 31 and 32. It's helpful in this regard.
15, 31 and 32. The ear that listens to life-giving reproof will dwell among the wise. Whoever ignores instruction despises himself, but he who listens to reproof gains intelligence.
So that's what I want, right?
Yeah.
I want to be a better saint. I want to be a better friend, a better man. I want to be a better pastor. I want to be a better elder. I want to be better. I don't want to just assume that I've achieved or I've arrived or I've attained. No. If there's something that I can hear that would help me be a better person, then I want to listen to that. And I want to give credit to a person who is aspiring me to be better by appreciating what they're telling me and not dismissing it out of hand. So I think we need to listen and try to figure out what is the kernel of truth that's here that God would have me recognize. Similar is Proverbs 17, verse 10, that I have always appreciated as well.
Yeah. A rebuke goes deeper into a man of understanding than 100 blows into a fool.
Yeah, so that means a wise man or a godly man, a man who has understanding, is going to benefit from the stimulation that a criticism produces. That he's not going to just, whatever, or I'll consider the source, get your own life in line and then come and see me. Or you haven't studied nearly as much as I have. What do you know? Well, God may choose to speak to us through his servants in ways that we would never have thought of. So being dismissive is, I think, irresponsible. So the first thing is examine truthfulness. There's something there for you to get, something that God intends for you to hear. Even in the most malicious, destructive criticism that's given in animosity, you need to say, okay, the way it's been said and the spirit with which it's been said may not be appropriate or godly, but what is actually being said needs to be considered, not just dismissed summarily, right? So consider it. Second thing is respond with humility and patience. I think, again, thinking that you're above criticism is a fool's errand. I think that we have to realize we're not above criticism ever. And so we need to receive criticism in a way that's appropriate. Turning back to Proverbs 15, I think when we're criticized, we need to realize the value of this soft answer. 15:1.
A soft answer turns away wrath, but a harsh word stirs up anger.
So I don't believe, and I'd have to rewind and really consider carefully, but my aspiration has always been never to be defensive. I don't defend myself. I don't give excuses or reasons or rationales or justifications or whatever. I take the criticism and say, yeah, I need to consider that. I need to be humble and patient, knowing that there's very likely something that I'll benefit from in it. And so I don't think it's appropriate to strike out and argue with somebody or be defensive or return evil for evil, but give a blessing instead. Romans teaches us, so that I think that's important. And in Proverbs 19, verse 11, if you read that one, Proverbs 19:11.
Good sense makes one slow to anger, and it is his glory to overlook an offense.
So if somebody comes and I could choose to take offense at their approach. I mean, there have been people that have said things to me that I've often thought, if I talk to them in any way, I mean, just half of the hostility that they're showing toward me right now, they would have just cause for discrediting me as a man of God. I mean, it's just, I can't believe that people can say these kinds of things with this kind of heart. But I don't want to in any way be defensive or arrogant or proud or having a spirit that is unwilling to admit that I can choose to overlook the offensiveness of what you're doing in order to listen to what you're actually saying.
Yeah.
And I think that's important. So I think, a lot of people just harden their hearts. They close their ears. They say, yeah, whatever. But I think that's not a wise man that does that, right? I think that's foolish. In Romans chapter 12, verses 17 and 18, we have that allusion, or that to which I had alluded earlier, Romans chapter 12, verses 17 and 18.
Repay no one evil for evil, but give thought to do what is honorable in the sight of all. If possible, so far as it depends on you, live peaceably with all.
So we don't talk to people with the same hostility that they talk to us, right? We don't do that. They can talk to us however they'd like. And we have the responsibility to bear it, to carry it, to absorb it, and help them express it. Not to just become a doormat, and let people wipe their feet on you. That's not what I'm suggesting. I don't think I'm ever perceived as being a doormat. But I always want someone to say when they have talked to me, even when they've been harshly critical, that I listened to them. I want them to know that I listened to them. And it would be my desire for them to walk away saying, okay, that went okay. I could come to him again. That's what I would choose.
Right.
If I had a choice. And so I press toward that in the way that I respect them as they're talking to me, even when they are not being kind or godly in their approach. I certainly do not find retribution by speaking at them or rebuking them or whatever, even though
no imprecatory prayers or anything.
How dare thee raise your voice against the anointed one. None of that tomfoolery. Right? None
Prosperity preacher business. Yeah,
right.
For sure.
None of that. But humility and gentle spirit, and what Paul talks about in 2 Timothy about the servant of the Lord must not strive with men, but be gentle and able to teach, and patience, instructing those who are in opposition. Yeah. So I think that's how we have to approach that. And then I think also we have to trust God's providence. God's in all these things.
Sure.
We have to trust him. Trust him not only to enable us to do something good with what we're receiving, but also that he's good in the person coming. He's been involved in that. I think of what Jesus endured in what is it, 1 Peter chapter 1 or 2, verse 23, 1 Peter 2:23. It
says, when he was reviled, he did not revile in return. When he suffered, he did not threaten, but continued entrusting himself to him who judges justly.
Yeah, right. That's what we do. Yeah. Same thing. And we've taken that example from our master. When we're criticized, we just trust the one who judges justly and not revile in response to being reviled. That does not ever accomplish anything good. I've said to people before, and I've had to talk to people numbers of times, when you're being criticized or something, you say, yeah, that's true. Yeah, I should do that. However, you need to do this. So I say, it's not the time to correct someone else after they've corrected you. It's not the time. I mean, if they need to be corrected, it's at a later time. Humility says you listen to what's being said and you seek to bring it in to what you need to think about in light of what has been said. I think that's important. And then strive to grow. I mean, just realize that I have growth. I'm, going to be 66 in July. And I have a lot of room to grow in every area of my life, every single area of my life. I have room to grow. And so I want to be growing until the day I die.
Yeah.
And then, I understand that, your body continues to grow in certain ways, that your earlobes and nose continue to grow. But anyway, wish my hair would. But look at Romans 5. Romans 5 and verses 3 and 4.
Paul writes, "Not only that, but we rejoice in our sufferings, knowing that suffering produces endurance, and endurance produces character, and character produces hope. And hope does not put us to shame, because God's love has been poured into our hearts through the Holy Spirit who has been given to us."
So these trials and tribulations and sufferings and things through which we go, all are a means by which God is able to accomplish a growth in our lives toward the hope that we have of conformity to Christ. And so realize that all of those things are helpful. And just again, Galatians 1 talks about, who am I seeking to please, God or men? If I'm confident and if I'm doing really what I do in order to please the Lord, if men criticize it, it's okay. I can listen to that criticism, but I go back to the Lord. I'm reminded of Samuel, right? When he was being criticized and he said, we don't want you to, we want a king. We don't want a prophet. We don't want your sons. And there's just cause for not wanting the sons. But, Samuel was very discouraged that they were rejecting him and any prophet from ruling over the people of God. And Samuel went really with grief to the Lord over the criticism that he'd received and the alternative that was presented by Israel. And he goes to God about it, and he calls out to the Lord, and the Lord says, Samuel, don't worry about it. They're not rejecting you. They're rejecting me.
Right.
I'd like to live so that when I'm living in a manner that is designed to please the Lord and people reject me or criticize me for that I'm able to say, okay, Lord, we're in this together.
Yeah, right. He's on your side. He's on your team.
But I understand that I'm trying to please you. I'm not trying to please men.
Yeah.
That you don't say to people, well, I'm not trying to please you anyway, so there. No, you don't have to do that.
Yeah.
But in your own heart, you understand why you're doing what you're doing. It's to honor the Lord.
Yeah.
And as long as he is not convicting you of something, even though people might criticize you for something, and you are seeking his Spirit's work in your life, then you're able to leave it with the Lord and go on your way, joyfully in Christ. And so that's how I deal with criticism.
Yeah. Well, thank you for doing that. I appreciate it a lot. I'll have some critique for you later, but we can do it off camera. No, I'm just kidding.
Thank you for loving me that
much.
much.
Hey, you're very welcome. No, I do appreciate it. It's very helpful. I think it's especially helpful for a young man because probably as you've gotten older, you've probably gotten better in this area.
Yeah.
So I appreciate it tremendously.
More temperance.
Thanks.
Yep.